Get the, we'll deal with the stuff as we go along. Are there any changes to the agenda? I need the agenda approved as presented, or as you guys have it. I need approval of the minutes of the December 1st meeting.
I can make a motion to accept those.
I'll second.
Okay, so we got a first and second, so they're approved. Is there anyone from the public? I don't see where there's anyone present. Does anyone have anything they want to talk about from the public? Okay, if no, then we go down to Mr. Dave Recupero. How do you pronounce that?
Recupero.
Recupero, you know how to pronounce it. Cool. Can you take over?
Sure. I'm going to make one last attempt here at seeing if we can use the shared screen. Otherwise, we'll just present the other way.
Well, most all of us are either on our computer or have access to it, I think. So it won't be the end of the world if you can't put it on the screen.
So I'll give it one quick try, and if it doesn't work in, just a couple of seconds, then we'll go to the other route.
It's interesting. It's showing you signed in. I'm just showing you, you're just muted on it though.
Yeah, you might shut it off and
But
turn
that
it
computer
on.
doesn't have a camera. That's why.
No, but that's not the camera. It's not the system he's on there, I don't think.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to,
Phone and his laptop.
Oh, he's using both.
Mhm.
I got it. Okay. All right. I thought that came up the first time you tried it.
okay, I'll hit the shared screen one more time.
Catherine, do you have the packet on your computer? Oh, there it is.
Oh, there goes it.
Huh?
Yeah,
Oh, now I have to go into.
It does. Huh? Better here.
You're talking to it.
Finance packet December. You see that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to start on page 8. Can you see my cursor?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I am going to start talking about the statistics. And for the month of December, I'm seeing if I can move this up. Here we go. So line item 8, which shows the acute days, we had another busy month on the acute side, 142. And that represents about a 9% over budget on the revenue side. Similarly, if we look at year to date, there's 809 on acute days compared to the 740. That's about a 9.3% higher than last year so far for this year. So what we're going to talk about this month, there's a lot of same themes going on in December as what we've been talking about the last several months. So you're not going to hear too much new, but we are going to highlight our current status. Moving down to line 15, our patients again showed that they had long lengths of stay, so they must have been sicker than normal and more severe. 5.9 length of stay is higher than budget prior year. And so that trend continues. Moving down to row 32, the ER visits continue to be strong. 553 compared to 449 last year. And then if you look at our year to date on total ER visits, the 3660 compares favorably to last year's 3097. That's about an 18% increase over prior year in ED. So ED and acute have really carried a large part of our financial success, with the volumes being higher so far the first half of this year.
You know, it was funny, Dave, that the ER did see some fall off during COVID because there were people reticent to go to the ER. So it's interesting that we have those kind of numbers for the year.
Yeah, it is interesting. Where I came from at San Gorgonio, they continue to have problems with people not willing to go to the ER. So, and they had 45,000 visits a year, so that was really hurt their bottom line.
Yeah.
So it's good to see the ER people trusting our ER and coming and getting treated. So the next page, I only wanted to just point out this adjusted financial strength index. That's one of the higher numbers I've seen, 1.99, mostly due to what it does is it looks at a 13-month rolling average of the profit margin, and we had a month drop off that wasn't very favorable, and the new month was better. So our average profit margin is better, and plus our cash went up for this month. So those two things combined helped the financial strength index improve. So going on to the next page, which is page 10, we have the net income projected for this year looks similar to where we finished last year. I do have some new information. Our audit, I received our final draft audit that will be presented next week at the full board meeting. The bottom line here, we're showing unaudited at $2,106,000, and the final audit number was $2,478,000, which is somewhere between this unaudited number and the year before that. So it was a good solid year. I wouldn't call it great, but it was, as you know, what really helped us at the end of the year was when we were able to post the PPP money. But keep in mind, a lot of our expenses that shows up on our audit, which was an 11% jump over last year. Thankfully, we got paid for it through some of the COVID-related stimulus money, like the PPP. So the bottom line was solid, but we did show a fairly high increase in expenses that we're going to have to really closely monitor going forward in order, because a lot of that revenue side isn't going to be reoccurring. So we're going to have to be careful and keep a close eye on our trying to figure out a way to get our expenses back down again, because compared to fiscal 20, our expenses on the audit shows an 11% increase. And a lot of it was due to COVID, but again, we do have to be careful on how much we add on the expense side, as the other revenue stuff might be going away. You can see the positive and negative takeaways. I'm pretty much going to touch on all these as we go through the rest of the pages, so I'm not going to repeat myself. So going down to the assets, I do want to point out that our cash got a lot higher. What we'll see in the income statement is that our IGT money with collections went way up for the month of December, which caused our cash to be higher. You can see the 2.7 million improvement due to the IGTs. Interesting, the way I post my allowances here, and I compare line 4 to line 2, which is the net to gross AR, that percentage fell from 22.3 the current month down to 20.8. What that is saying is that we are seeing a reduced collection rate on our payments coming in the business office. So we're keeping a close eye on that. It is somewhat understandable that from one year to the next that collection rate does go down a little bit because we see that there is a increase in rates of 7%, but the payers don't pay us an increase of 7%, so the collection rate by definition goes down a little bit every year.
Dave, did you notice any kind of a mix change, you know, from Medicare to Medi-Cal or things like that that might also explain it?
Good question. That's something that I do look at. Nothing jumped out at me, but I do need to look at that again closer. It might be a higher percentage of Medicaid in there that causing that collection average to be lower. So that's a good point.
Hey, Dave,
Yes.
on what we were just looking at with the Blue Shield and what most people have is the standard plan with 8,000 deductible or maximum out of pocket, and so is that an issue with? Have we had a bunch of those where they're not going to be able to pay the 8,000, but that's what it's going to be? Does that show up anywhere?
It could very well be still sitting in AR and not being paid. We don't give up on those types of claims, but you're right, it does slow down the payment and causes our days in AR to go up. We eventually challenge those types of issues and we keep at it until we finally get paid, but it does cause the receivables to go higher until we actually get it all resolved. But that is a new situation that is going on right now.
Yeah, because they can have the insurance for $2 a month, and worst case scenario is like everything else is paid, which is great, but they still we're still behind the 8,000 that amount. Okay.
Yep. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the liabilities. Interesting, we see for the first time in several months, this line 10, that number's been going down. It up this time, which means I didn't record all the new payments into the bottom line. I left some of it out there because I knew Rick Jackson was also working on that for the audit. So eventually we're going to straighten that out. But the point is, this is a conservative look at our profit loss. We are showing an increase in due to third-party payers, which is just an estimate that until we get reassurance that all the new money's coming in, we don't have to pay back. We put it in this bucket here due to third-party payers. So my point in showing that this is an increase just means that the month of December is a conservatively posted bottom line. Could have been a higher number if we would have gotten a little more optimistic about how much we expect to retain. So that number is up 1.7 million for the month. The next line item, I did want to point out on the other part, what we expect not to collect is still a real high number. Now we pretty much have confirmation, I think, and Rick alluded to the fact that he had to bring this number down. You'll see when you get the audit, when he presents that next week, that the HHS payable here, we don't have to pay back because we succeeded in submitting our justifications. So he has taken this number down a little bit in the final number that will make that adjustment next month due to the audit change. So there's less of a liability for HHS payable, which is good news. The next is the current month of December. And like I mentioned, we had a 9% favorable on the acute side, the 9.21%. But the rest of these, especially if you look at lines 2 and 3, the clinic and outpatient continues to be down. They're not doing as many cases on elective outpatient. And the clinic, although the ER is busy. So that's interesting. The interesting on the total operating expenses, line 28, I give Chet credit. He really knew what to budget. He missed it by $694 of total expenses, 0.03% variance. So we hit it, was dead nuts on total operating expenses. But we'll see later, that's not necessarily a good number, because we're going to see compared to prior months, this was one of our highest months on expenses. And bottom line, we did have a slight negative here on operating and a slight positive for net surplus. But let's look over here. Last December looked really bad. So December doesn't necessarily turn out, at least while COVID's around, as good months. People are staying away from using the hospital as much. So thankfully, we didn't have these large of losses as we did a year ago in December of 542 and 498. Any questions so far? We do have one positive that hit our non-operating. And now this is in a category that I've noticed over the years. Chet hasn't been using this line above it. I'm going to start using it because it was an auxiliary contribution. Most of this 46,000 belongs up in the line labeled contributions. We got both the foundation and the auxiliary to pay for salad, the new salad bar, and Barbara, what was the other item?
The stretchers for the ER.
Okay. So that was close to $45,000 of contributions that helped our bottom line for the month.
That aren't in here, is what we're saying.
No, it's part of that 46,000.
Oh, that's investment income.
Well, that's what
Yes.
he's going to separate.
We really
Okay.
want to show it. We want to show it in the future as contribution because that's really where.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to look at how we're doing for the first half of the year. We are showing a nice operating surplus. That's not very common. Usually we lose money from operations, so that's a good sign. And then bottom line, about 1.5 million, 1.466 ahead of budget. The interesting thing here is we see the continued success on the line item here, 11, the 17,095. You can see how much better that was than a year ago of 13 million. Now, about $1 million of that difference is in bringing in prior year overstated liabilities, some of the amount Chet put in there that he wasn't sure we would have to pay back. So some of this bottom line was an adjustment from prior year being overstated due to third-party settlements. But still, the other part has to do with the increase in volumes and expected collections. So that's the money coming into the organization. And you always want to see this line 11 to be higher than prior year because that shows that we're in a growth mode. And as you know, it's a lot easier to improve your business operations on the revenue side because your expenses with inflation and people want raises and supply costs continue to go up. So it's going to be harder to control the expense side. You really need to continue to grow your revenues, which is an important strategy. And that seems to be happening right so far the first half of this year. Next page. I just wanted to point out how this shows you a trend of every month, and it goes backwards. It goes December, and then backwards 1 month to November, October. But looking at total operating expenses, line 28, you can see we've had several months, all of these months except for the current month was right at around 2,550,000. And then December really jumps out at you as it went up significantly higher for December of 2.7 million. So you can see salaries was one of the line items that was much higher, but it's an interesting way to kind of look at the trends, see what's going on. We may be better than last year, better than budget, but how are we doing compared to the prior months? And you can see it was a much higher expense month in the month of December. I know we had a lot more people not being able to work, so there's a lot more non-productive pay on salaries because of the COVID. A lot more people out due to COVID, and that contributes to the higher salaries and wages. Any questions on this page? So getting closer to the end here, I'm going to go down to this page that we showed you a couple months ago. I decided to put it in as part of a permanent document every month, which is an AR picture. And I'm just going to show all services, and it highlights the specific information by payer category. And because we really wanted to see, we had some good news in December. Our AR did improve. And so, whoops, I knew that was going to happen. Okay, so here's my, gotta move this out of the way here. Okay, now I can do it. All right, so what I wanted to show you is lines 12 and 13, Medicare and Medi-Cal. This is the gross AR by payer. It was 30 million last month. I'm going to make this bigger. Okay. So 30,596,000 in November came down to 28 million. So we wanted to see what payer groups had the biggest drop. And you can see Medicare and Medi-Cal. So that's not the HMO. Those are the straight ones from the fee-for-service payers, the state and the federal government, not the private companies doing HMOs. So the state and federal got their act together and started getting caught up on processing claims in the month of December. And so these numbers dropped significantly. You can see, especially Medi-Cal, the state really came through and brought those balances down quite a bit. And that could be a reason for the collection percentage to show lower, is we're getting more claims adjudicated for Medi-Cal recently, and that might cause it. One of the questions earlier, because Medi-Cal is the lowest payer percentage of actual compared to charges. The other good news is on the collection rate, and that section is line 24, and you can see that was our best month of the year, 2,525,000 of total patient collections. And you can see the Medi-Cal being the big number, line 21 of 1,151,000 of cash coming in from Medi-Cal. So that makes sense that the AR would go down because the cash came in. So when we calculate these different categories by gross days in AR, we can see in total, we went from 92.97 down to 88. And we can see that Medi-Cal, for example, went from 105 down to 86. And Medicare from 63 down to 50. So those two represented improvements. So when we sit down with the business manager, we try to create an action plan to improve the rest of it. We're going to go after these other payers, the HMOs, the other insurances, and find out what's going on. Why are they so slow in paying their bills? So that's all I had for the month. Like I said, a lot of similar themes. Rick Jackson will be presenting the audit. And I didn't know what time of what part of the meeting next week that we usually have him present. Is it during the finance presentation?
We move him up to the beginning of the agenda so he doesn't have to sit through the whole meeting.
Okay. Now I'm going to figure out how to unshare the screen. And I think I figured it out.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm turning it back over. And is there any other questions I can answer?
Nope, looks really good.
Yeah, I don't have any.
apologize. Thank you. I apologize for the technical. This was a new challenge for me to have to use this PC, but I guess we got to figure it out.
Barbara, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, I think you're up next with the funding report or vendors report.
Yes. And there's only $3,000 out there in the current column for January that is open at the time I ran this report, which was on 1/18.
Okay,
Any questions on any of them?
that's, yeah. If there's no question, it looks good. Okay, I guess we're back to Dave on this supplement reimbursement agreement.
We still have the contract.
Dave, now, do we have to get Fred to leave the room? Is that one of his brothers or cousins?
I think we're in good shape.
Okay.
So are we talking about this contingency contract? Is that what's on the agenda?
Steve Clark, yes.
Yeah. So we've had a long-term relationship with this firm. They've been instrumental in helping us stay on top of the IGT issues. They do have a couple experts on staff that work on a daily basis with both the state of California's regulators plus the individual third-party payers in terms of understanding the process and the timing of when new payment opportunities come up for hospitals, especially district hospitals. And they have reached out to me, knowing that I'm one of the CFOs that tend to really try to push the envelope to maximize what we can get. And they thought maybe they could make a little money off of us by enticing us into this contingency opportunity. They did give me some specific detail that got my attention. They have been talking with HealthNet, which isn't anything that I had heard from Tim or anybody as far as opportunities. And they sense that if we play our cards right, there may be some more dollars that get divvied up over to us based on formulas that they use. They use certain criteria on what hospitals are more deserving. The state has the state has decided to, in most cases, on especially the rate range IGT, to completely turn over the prerogative of how much each hospital gets and the allocation to the HMOs, the third-party payers for Medi-Cal. And that is something we want to find out exactly what buttons to push, who to call, what to tell them, why we should get a higher percentage. And they would play that role with me to keep me informed when things are happening, who to call, what to say. And if we get more than what we normally would have expected, they are asking for a 12% cut of that. Let's assume best case scenario, we get an extra $1 million from HealthNet. We'd have to cut them a check for $120,000. So that's the type of arrangement.
Dave, that money, I'm sure you know the answer, but I don't. So I'm going to ask if it's a grant or something that they're giving us. Can we share that? I mean, is it something we legally can pay them?
Yeah, it's a good question, because you wonder how legal all this stuff is. Why are they able to do this, which is pretty much not very scientific. It's somewhat political, that people get the money, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, I guess. Yeah, it's all legal. There's no problem with it. An IGT is a little different than a grant. You don't have to pay it back. It's similar in that regard. but there's a whole science to it because of the way the state has set up these programs in terms of who has the authority to do what. And the CFOs, the ones that seem to be the successful are the ones that seem to be the most engaged and stay on top of it on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis. And working with a consultant like Steve Clark and Associates and David Vance and Nathan Davis, I'm used to working with those two, and I've had some good success with them at the other hospital I was at. So they do know what they're doing. They have got some done a lot of good training for me and telling me, exactly what to look out for and how to put us in the best position to get the highest reward. So it's something that I've always, it's interesting how that's being such a big part of a CFO's job in the state of California is managing these IGTs.
There's no history of them feeling they deserved something they really didn't deserve, or are they pretty smooth and easy to work with? Is it pretty
they did a contingency with me at San Gorgonio on Dish, and they had to wait 4 years because I was smart enough not to pay them until they actually got me something, and then finally it came through. But they only collected after the check came in because I didn't want to have to pay a big bill out until I actually had the money in my hands. And you're right in that they asked for 30 days, and I could pay them 30 days if I've got a big check already has come in. So that's how, I intend, if in fact they are successful, it'll be good for us too, because that'll be an extra $1 million we weren't expecting.
Dave, in light of that, are we planning to do that with these guys? Is that the payment would be due after our receipt of the funds?
Yeah, and I might have to look at the exact wording of that contract and maybe tweak it a little bit so that that's exactly what the final.
Yeah, we don't want to pay out of pocket until we get our money.
Exactly, until the actual money has come in.
Right.
Can we get it tweaked before it goes to the board on the 7th?
Yeah, I don't know why not. I would think that they'd still want to do the deal.
Sure.
So yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Hey, Dave, do they only do hospitals? I've got an ex-wife that owes me a bunch of money.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Okay, that it sounds awesome. It sounds like we're exploring everything. If they don't get anything, we don't owe them anything, and so
exactly,
like a really good deal. And
I like it because we don't have to pay a penny until they actually come through for us.
Okay, so we want to. Okay, let me understand. We want to send this to the consent agenda, right, Heidi?
Well, no, we'll need to bring it back and modify it.
If we're making significant changes to it, but if you guys are approving it with the addition of
with
that stipulation that they don't pay him,
it could go to consent. It's up to you.
Yeah, I think we would want to approve it with that stipulation.
And with changes expected, and the board can make their mind up at that point. Yes.
Yeah, we don't pay till we get paid. So.
Did you want consent or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, Catherine. You're on
You're
mute.
My dogs are barking when the UPS person came. So, so consent changes, but what if we don't get the changes that we want?
Then we'd have to pull it off of
we
consent.
Just pull it off. Okay, that's fine.
Yep.
By putting it on, it's available if we need it.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Okay, then.
Catherine, he's all yours.
Okay. Then there's nothing else.
We didn't discuss contracts. Did anybody have questions on the list of contracts?
I slid past that. New business contracts, Barbara.
Yes. Did anybody have any questions on any of these? There's a couple of positions. They're not up for renewal, actually, Dr. Thomas's is. 19, 25,
I looked them over. I
This
didn't
should be
have
looked
any
at.
I didn't have any questions on those.
So
I could add some new information for this committee that I followed up on an item from yesterday's building and planning on the 5.5 million new borrowing. And you're right, there is a 3-year time limit, March 24th of 2024, that 5 million has to get spent. But the good news is I spent all afternoon with 2 attorneys, and we worked out very specific ways if we wanted the flexibility to avoid that rule, because we have some extenuating circumstances that we qualify for an exception, and there is no problem with doing it the way we're doing it. So we do have some flexibility that after we do a file to memo and we show the documentation, that in the rare event of an IRS audit, we would not have any liability because we didn't spend the 5.5 million in the 3 years. So we do have that flexibility.
that's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
We needed breathing room, or Tim does.
We all do.
Okay, did we send that to the consent agenda, Heidi?
The contracts?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone object to it going to the consent?
Motion to do that.
Okay. Heidi, then send it to the consent agenda.
Okay.
Right, Catherine?
Correct.
Okay. Well, you guys are going to want to hear this. We're adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.